Hi there, my name is Dr. Sam. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the Executive Director at TGS Educational Consulting. And I'm so glad that you're here for our video session on Rethinking Rewards. Now, a lot of the interactive features aren't going to work because this is a video session. And so we'll just pause and talk through some of those interactive features so that we still get the benefit of the thinking of it, but just know that they might not necessarily work just the same. That said, I wanted to keep the content as consistent as possible so that we just have the maximum benefit of our time together. But again, just thank you so much for being here and just for being present. So as we get started, I just wanted to share just some things that I think are really going to help our participation today. And the first is just that cameras are optional. It's completely fine with me if you'd like to participate where you can be seen on camera, or if you prefer to participate off camera. Both work. The other thing to know is that both inside and outside participation are just fine. A lot of times at PD sessions, more extroverted ways of participating tend to get favored. Oh, let's talk, let's go to small groups, let's do things like that. It is great. I would love to hear your voice if you want to participate that way, but also the engagement that we do inside our heads and inside our hearts is perfectly fine too. And that's perfectly fine. So whatever you feel like you want to do in terms of participation, you're absolutely invited, and I'd be delighted if you did, but it's also completely fine too if you just feel better about just listening and just listening and participating that way. The other thing to know is that everything that we do together is going to be an invitation, not an expectation. So, if you'd like to do something that I invite you to do, I'd be delighted if you gave it a try, but it's completely okay if maybe right now the second isn't the time that you're feeling like doing that. And then the other thing is, I know we're talking about recognition systems and positive behavior interventionist supports, but there will be no triangle as part of this particular presentation because, to be honest, I don't think that the triangle really gets us anywhere in PBIS and doesn't really matter in terms of how we talk about recognition systems anyway. So there's not going to be a triangle, but we're still going to be talking about something that'd be really supportive for schools that are implementing a positive behavior intervention and supports framework, and honestly just for schools that want to think about how we might want to tell students the truth about all the good that they bring to school every single day. Just a little bit about me as we get started. Up in the upper left here, that's a picture just of my family, and we're all out hiking right here. This is my oldest. My oldest is 13. These are my twins that are 7 years old. We spent a lot of time in Sabino Canyon, which is a great place to go hiking here in Tucson. That's me. That's my partner LaShawn, and then that's our friend Adam. And so this is just us on a hike. This right here is a Valentine's Day, and if you've ever had a birthday on a holiday, you know that sometimes your birthday can get a little bit lost in the shuffle. Our friend Enzo's birthday happens to be on Valentine's Day, so it was just a really nice way for us to just to get together on Valentine's Day to go to this disco dance party. It was just a lot of fun. And the other thing is that my partner LaShawn has a lot of memories of dancing to Donna Summer's disco music with his grandmother, and it was just a really special thing for us to get to do together. So that's me, that's my partner LaShawn, that's our friend Adam again, that's our friend Enzo. This is Enzo's sister Ashley right here. This right here is one of my favorite PD sessions that I get to do. I do a lot of work on creating inclusive classrooms for students with ADHD. And in this session, we actually go outside. We get to go outside and explore one of the best not medicine interventions we've got for kids with ADHD, and that's time outdoors and physical activity. So in this activity, the teachers are completing a scavenger hunt of just different ways that we might take learning outside and sending selfies that we turn into this really big collage. It's always a lot of fun. The engagement is always super high, and it's one of those ways that we get to live our learning out loud. So hey, if you ever have a chance to take your kids learning outside, you absolutely are going to have one of the best days of your life, I promise, for sure. Now, if you've been with me for any length of time, you know I am a Kane Brown fan. So here is the Kane Brown update for this particular session. I had the chance to go see Kane Brown's very first concert of the new tour just a couple weeks ago. That's because my partner got me this tickets for our anniversary. It's just a really special time together. So it was a lot of fun, and it was in San Diego. And then the day after the Kane Brown concert, we had a lot of fun too because we were able to go to the Cherry Blossom Festival at the Japanese Friendship Garden. LaShawn absolutely loves cherry blossoms, and they're kind of hard to come by here in Tucson. So it was great just to get to spend some time together in that way. So thanks so much for just letting me share a little bit about myself and just giving you the chance to get to know me a little bit better. One of the things that I'll do in our live session is I'll just ask everybody to pause and consider, okay, so what might be on your mind and on your heart as we get ready to do this PD session? And honestly, it really could be anything. For a lot of people, it's like, oh, did I unload the dishwasher today? I think I was supposed to. Oh, what's for dinner? It could be, I'm excited to see my grandbabies this weekend. Like whatever's there is exactly the right thing to be there. And so if you'd like, the invitation is to take a breath, if you'd like. I'm not in charge of your lungs. You don't have to breathe if you don't want to. But if you'd like, fill up your lungs with air. Just think, what is on my mind right now? is on my heart? And honestly, like what's on my mind right now is that I'm just really thinking about all the things I'm going to try to get done around the house this weekend that have kind of been let slide a bit. But whatever is on your mind or on your heart right now, of course, it's exactly the right thing. Well, thanks so much for engaging and for pausing for just a moment. And I hope that was supportive for you. And one of the things that I'll ask in the live sessions is, how often have you received positive feedback from an adult at work? We think about, in the last week or so. So in the last week, have you received positive feedback from an adult at work, 0 to 2 times, 3 to 5 times, 6 to 8 times, or 9 or more? Now, this grid graph can turn out any kind of way depending on who happens to be in the group and what situation I happen to be presenting then. But very often, the 0 to 2 and the 3 to 5 bars of the graph tend to be pretty tall, and then the 6 to 8 and the 9 or more tend to not be so tall necessarily. And so we have a chance to think about, if we're not really receiving a lot of positive feedback from adults at work, what might this mean? What might this mean? And is it important? Is it something that we want to change necessarily? And usually, when I'm working with teachers and principals and school leaders of any kind, we think, yeah, actually, we would like to have a way for us to be receiving positive feedback from each other a bit more often. And it isn't really exactly the high number that I kind of would want to. And just think about as I'm thinking about positive feedback from adults at work. And so the invitation is generally, okay, perhaps we do it now. And what I'll do during the live session when we're all together is I'll just invite people to take out their cell phones and say, is there somebody in my life or somebody, at work even, who deserves to hear a kind word? And maybe I might just send them a text and let them know. Let them know what they did and what it means to me. And of course, it's an invitation because I can't make you text anybody, for goodness sakes. But after everybody starts sending their texts, and very often I start hearing ding, ding, dings, notifications coming on in the room of all the people getting all these positive texts from each other. One of the things that I'll do is I'll just ask, how do you feel? How do you feel? And most people generally feel pretty good about sending somebody that deserves to hear it a kind word for some kind of reason, one way or the other. Now, one of the things that I'll also do, and it's important that we think about this, especially in the context of recognition systems within PBIS frameworks at schools, is to say, what if I framed it this way? What if I said, okay, everybody who sends a kind text to somebody gets a bag of chips? Now, if I framed it that way, somehow that kind of changes the value of the kind act that we just did. It turns it, instead of just a good way to recognize somebody for something that they've done in their lives, and turns it kind of into a transaction that we never really expected, never wanted, maybe even feels a little bit disrespectful. I've even heard that a couple of times. And it's just a very important thing for us to think about as we look to design recognition systems within behavior support frameworks, especially if that happens to be PBIS at your school. Generally speaking, classic PBIS has relied heavily on extrinsic rewards and prizes and PBIS stores and things like that. We don't really need it. And we can do better if we can rethink rewards and how we use them in schools. So recognition happens more often when there is a system to make it happen. And that's, Dr. Tim is a person who says it a lot, but also a lot of other people too, like Lowell Milken. And he's got a quote that explains his perspective on that. But a lot of times, when people think about, I haven't really received a whole lot of positive recognition at work, it's not because we're surrounded by negative people necessarily. That's rarely the case at a school. Usually we're surrounded by very caring, warm, wonderful people, if we're people who help children learn and grow all day, for goodness sakes. But often if there isn't really a system where we have a chance to connect, where we have a chance to tell each other the truth about the good that we bring to our school community, it's not necessarily going to happen. And so that's honestly why I invite us to take out our cell phones and send those kind texts, because that's a system that's pretty easy to put in place and doesn't require a whole lot of effort. It'd be really easy to start every staff meeting, for example, or to maybe that be something that I do when I start the day, is to send that kind text. And then we start to see that when there's a system that can be a vehicle for our kind words, those kind words and authentic words of recognition can be a lot more genuine and generous when there's a system to support that. So we can think about our recognition system, whatever it is really just being a vehicle for words. It doesn't need to do anything more than that. Now, here's what Lowell Milken actually said. Is the power of recognition is one of the strongest forces for stimulating human and social action. And so it's from Lowell Milken. He's the co-founder of the Milken Family Foundation, and a lot of work that they do with, just supporting education is something that I can really just appreciate and get behind, for sure. And just thinking about recognition as being one of the biggest levers of change that we might actually have. So one of the goals for our time together is to think about options that we have for addressing positive behavior. And all four of these have been used extensively in schools in grade 0 to 99. And they're similar kinds of words, but they're very, very different in some important ways. And understanding this difference is very important for getting the most out of our recognition systems. And the different ways that we can address positive behavior are through rewards, through bribes, through incentives, and through recognition systems. And they're not exactly the same, but they're a little bit different here. Now, in thinking about this a bit, I thought it might be helpful just to have a bit of examples. So kind of going back to that kind text, we've got some examples here. So what is a reward? A reward is something given after a student meets expectations or achieves a goal. And the reward is not necessarily connected with the behavior. So for example, if I wanted to reward people for sending a kind text, I might say, everyone who gets a kind text gets a $5 Starbucks coupon. And a really key difference in rewards and all of these other things is it's given right after a positive behavior with the goal of reinforcing it. Now that might be the goal, but let's think about this just for a second. If the reason why people are sending kind texts is because they're looking for a $5 Starbucks coupon, what does that do with the integrity of the action itself? With the integrity of the motivation for participating in this behavior in the first place? It changes it quite a bit into something that's a bit more like a transaction than it is really a way of recognizing and reinforcing a job well done. Now, a bribe is something else that sometimes happens in schools. And I got to be honest, it's a very problematic strategy to employ, but there are certain times where I kind of understand why educators might use it. It's one of those things where when there's no amount of ibuprofen that's going to get us through the day, sometimes a bribe is a really tempting kind of choice right here just to get us through the particular moment that we happen to be in. So I understand why it happens. It's just also important to understand that it's very problematic in terms of our long-term goals of supporting positive behavior. And a bribe is an offer given before students follow expectations. So in the context of sending a kind text to somebody, just that invitation just now, it would sound like, if everybody sends a kind text, I'll send everyone a $5 Starbucks coupon. And the difference here is that it's offered before behavior change, and the goal is to really encourage short-term compliance. It's not really about developing a habit where we start seeing this behavior supported long-term. It's just about, right now, I need a thing done. Can you just do it, please? And if you do, I'll give you this. So if-then tends to be the framing for that kind of thing. Now, an incentive is something that we talk about all the time in positive behavior intervention and support. So we talk all the time about how important incentives are. Well, okay, let's think about it like this. An incentive is a planned motivator that requires work towards a goal. And the difference here is that we set it up in advance before the work or behavior occurs. So an example in the case of this sending a kind text invitation would be, hey, for every month in which you send one kind text per day, we're going to credit you $10 off your cell phone bill. So it's an incentive because you're working towards something, and it is kind of connected to the behaviors. Okay, if I send text, then my phone bill goes down. And the goal of this is to encourage effort towards a goal before the behavior actually happens. So the difference between a bribe and incentive really, honestly, is just in timing. That, we bribe before the behavior happens. Incentives, we're going to set something up before the behavior happens, but the behavior needs to happen, and it needs to be kind of a long-term sort of goal. And it's really more about the effort than about the specific event. Now, I would say incentives are probably a little bit better than bribes in terms of long-term strategies for supporting positive behavior. But I think that really what we need to be aiming for is something that looks a lot more like recognition. And recognition is when we acknowledge a student's positive behavior or achievement, usually, but not necessarily with words. And it might sound something like this. You know what? Many people feel good after sending those positive texts, and I can tell that you might be feeling good too. And honestly, it means a lot to me that you're willing to participate. Thanks. Now, the key difference here is that we're focusing on verbal or relational acknowledgement rather than tangible items. It's not necessarily, that anybody's going to trade my words in to get a Starbucks coupon. It's just knowing that, hey, something happened. The outcome matters somehow. Things are different because we did a thing together. And that recognition honestly is going to be that thing that really seals relationships and supports positive behavior long term, way more than offering rewards, bribes, or setting up complicated incentives or PBIS stores. So here's some student examples here with a reward. So a reward would be like when a teacher lets a student choose a prize out of the prize block for finishing all their work. A bribe might be, hey, if y'all can get through this period without interrupting, I'll give you 5 PBIS tickets. An incentive might be students who earn an A at the end of the semester don't need to take the final exam. Now, I think that's a lot less problematic than a bribe because at least we're encouraging the effort towards a goal. That students who earn an A, don't need to take the final exam, and we're not necessarily bribing them. We're just saying, hey, if you've earned an A, if you've learned the content, we don't need to test you twice. I mean, I think it's not quite as problematic as rewards and bribes are. Then we think about recognition is when we're acknowledging that student's positive behavior or achievement. We're simply acknowledging it. We're just acknowledging that we see a thing and that thing is good and helpful somehow. And generally speaking, we're going to do that with words. Hey, thanks for working hard on your assignment. The effort shows in the quality of your work. And of course here, the main difference between recognition systems is that it focuses on verbal or relational acknowledgement rather than tangible items. And so let's just think about this for a second. A lot of times I work with schools that want to talk to me all about the amazing PBIS store where kids can earn tickets for being respectful, responsible, and safe. And then they can save these tickets and then they can turn them in and get like erasers and pencils and, gift cards to places they can buy burritos and stuff like that. We have to really think about why it is that we want students to be demonstrating these values. Why would we want students to be living these values out loud? It's not because we want them to get burritos. If we want to give them burritos, we should just give them burritos just because it's fun. We don't need to have a reason for doing that. But if what we want them to do is to recognize the relationship between what they do and the way that their behavior changes and affects everybody else in the school community, recognition is really the approach that most directly ties, the behavior and the effort and the work out to the outcomes that we're looking to see, outcomes that are shared by all, but also experienced individually by the person participating in the positive behavior we'd like to support. And so I'm going to say that we need to be focusing on recognition as the way that we're going about supporting positive behavior, because that's the way we can tell students the truth about all the good that they're bringing to school each and every single day. So how can we recognize a student? To be honest, we recognize a student, generally speaking, with words. And our words are going to say, hey, what they did, what happened, and if there's time, we might also explain why it matters. Now, we don't always have like gobs and gobs of time to have extended conversations about things, even when we wish we could just, gush praise all over students who've done amazing things. But what we want to do is to be really specific and helpful here, because that way students know, okay, what they did, what the positive outcome was, and then if we have time, we can explain why it matters. And that's going to make it much more likely that students know what to do so they can repeat that performance and experience the positive results over and over and over again. So it's kind of like, if I'm learning how to swing a baseball bat at a ball and hit it, and I'm struggling and I'm struggling, and my coach keeps telling me different kinds of things to do, and then all of a sudden I'm successful and I strike that ball and I hit that hit, and I am absolutely just doing exactly what my coach wanted to do. The time for my coach to tell me that is going to be right then and there. They're going to explain to me what I did. We're going to take a look at how far that baseball flew, and then they're going to explain to me why it matters that I was able to put into place all the things that I was learning. Now, here's some elementary examples, and there's actually a handout that was emailed to you, and it's got 75 ways, basically 75 recognition examples. Here's a few of the elementary ones. I see how carefully you wrote your letters and numbers. That effort makes a big difference. Another one is, you were excited to learn today, and that excitement made our class even better. You made sure everyone had a turn to talk. That shows you care about others. Now, all we did right there is we explained, what happened, and then we explained what the outcome was. And if we had time, we could even explain why it matters too. Here's some middle school examples. Your writing has such a unique voice. Keep developing that. It makes your work stand out. You encouraged a classmate when they were feeling unsure. That kind of support makes a difference. You took responsibility when you made a mistake and you worked to fix it. This shows real maturity. And in high school, we might say things like, you pushed through the difficult parts instead of giving up. That's resilience in action. You weren't afraid to disagree and to explain your reasoning. That's a skill that will serve you well beyond school. You took the time to really listen to a peer's perspective. That kind of openness is rare and valuable. Why this works is we're not saying, hey, thank you for being respectful. Here's your PBIS ticket. Now, we can use PBIS tickets as part of this, but we're going to need to make sure that we're focused much more on the quality of our words rather than simply on the ticket itself. Because the ticket really is meant to be a vehicle for our words. And when we have words that are specific, that are telling students the truth about what they did and why it matters, we're really good at doing this when students behave in ways that are unhelpful or challenging somehow. But we can also get equally good at being very specific at why it matters that students are living our values out loud and what they did that demonstrates that. And the best part is we can find our own authentic voice that feels good, it feels true to us, and connects us with the age group of the students that we're working with here. Now, a lot of times schools that implementing PBIS will use something that is like a ticket. And this comes from Ventana Vista Elementary School. This is the ticket that they're using. You'll notice it is incredibly simple. There's really not much to it. You know why? Because there's no PBIS store. There's nothing that needs to get done with the ticket. As soon as the student gets the ticket, their only job really is to take it home and show their home grown-ups that they got a ticket. And they can get a ticket for being safe, for being engaged, for being supportive, for being flexible, and also for bilingual brilliance, because this school happens to be a dual language school, and so students are learning in English and in Spanish. And so when a teacher happens to notice a student being bilingual somehow, we have a chance to recognize that as well. Now, it's very easy to do, and it's meant to be easy so that we're focused really not on the ticket, but much more on the words. So we might say, hey, you know what? When you chose to walk on the right side of the hallway and walk kind of slowly so we weren't bumping into anybody, that was a great way to be safe. Thanks. That's all that we need to do. That's all that we need to say. There's really nothing else that needs to happen to support positive behavior. We will see the positive outcomes that we are looking for without needing to turn it into any kind of currency or any kind of PBIS store at all. So if your school is using a ticket, the thing to really focus on is how can we make sure that our words are explaining, okay, what did we see students do that demonstrated that they were engaged? What did I see that showed me that student was being supportive? How can I say that to that student in plain English? And then all I have to do is explain why it matters and say thanks. Give the ticket, move on, and we're going on with the rest of our day. And that's the key to this really is simplicity and specificity. All right, so just a summary of what we're talking about here. Recognition matters, and done well, it's gonna matter a lot. Also important is our recognition system is not meant to be a vehicle for prizes and rewards and just principal for a day and stuff like that. Our recognition system is really just meant to be a vehicle for our words. And we can elevate the quality of our recognition by elevating the words. Now, I want to be real clear. I think it's great to give kids popsicles and have a popcorn party and to go have extra recess. But we can do those things just because it's fun to do, just because it adds joy to our school community. But if we're trying to support positive behavior, we're not going to make any of those celebrations contingent on behavior at all. Contingency is absolutely going to destroy relationships and destroy the foundation of what we're trying to do. What we're going to do is we're going to recognize the good that our students bring to school each and every single day, and we're going to elevate our recognition by elevating the words. Thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. I definitely hope that you have a chance to reach out just with your thoughts on the video and just any other ways that we can show up for you as you work to elevate the quality of recognition within your PBIS framework or within any approach to behavior supports that your school might be implementing.